For most of human history, the strong man has been a central organizing figure. We can imagine our proto-human ancestors on the African savanna behaving like mountain gorillas do today, the mature males fighting each other to establish dominance, and the rest of the tribe seeking protection by gathering around the toughest silverback. At some point, the idea of social rules that applied to everyone, including the strong man, appeared in human consciousness. Western civilization traces that appearance to ancient Greece, although we know how limited the reach of the idea was back then in a slave-owning society. Nevertheless, by the time of America's founding, a quarter of a millennium ago, the idea that a nation could be ruled by laws and not merely by strong men was widespread on the planet, if not widely practiced. We humans still have a ways to go to fulfill the idea of the rule of law. We still instinctively look for a strong man to defend us from our enemies and fix our most troublesome problems for us. This is the case even in America, as evidenced by the importance we ascribe to the office of the president. I would argue that in our most recent election, we asked for and received a contest between two strong men. One of them just happened to be a woman. The problem with the idea of the rule of law is that laws have to be administered by fallible men and women, human beings who may not yet be willing to accept responsibility for the shape of their society. In recent days, we've seen judges standing up to the chief executive in ways that some characterize as brave, but they're simply doing their jobs and confirming the wisdom of the founders, who knew that judges had to have lifetime job security if they were to be truly independent of the executive branch. But judges merely decide the cases that are brought before them. The rule of law also depends on large numbers of citizens who understand the law, how it is made, how it affects the people, and how to get results within its confines. The name for a person who has such an understanding is lawyer. If we're to continue our evolution as a nation ever more perfectly under the rule of law and not the rule of men, then we will need more lawyers. Indeed, given our recent national flirtation with strongman government, this may be required for our very survival. But something more needs to happen than just the training of more citizens as lawyers. The practice of law will have to become viewed as a common enterprise, and private lawyers as public servants. Now, they won't be public servants as we're used to thinking of them, employees of a government agency. We need to begin to see the private activity of lawyers and their clients as imbued with a public purpose. The orderly playing out of human economic and social interactions under clear rules, broadly agreed to by the citizenry as fair, and predictable and transparent in their application. For this to happen, lawyers need to actually serve most citizens. Right now, we don't. Our profession serves corporations and wealthy individuals well, and a vanishingly small number of the poor through legal aid programs. The vast majority of Americans never hire a lawyer. Modern society is complicated. Americans need highly trained, sophisticated advocates to mediate between them and the two most powerful types of entities that impact their lives, their government and, increasingly, private corporations. But in most significant transactions, lawyers aren't present. The 18-year-old entering into a multi-decade debt relationship to pay for college. The young couple borrowing hundreds of thousands of dollars to buy their first house. The entrepreneur starting a business. And while the Supreme Court has recognized that the Constitution affords those accused of a crime the right to be represented by a trained advocate dedicated to their defense, we haven't yet decided whether other grave threats to life, liberty, and the freedom to pursue one's vision of happiness, such as being evicted from your home, defending a divorce against a spouse with more money than you, or facing a domestic abuser, should also entitle one to a professional champion. As a result, our courts are overwhelmed by a flood of unrepresented litigants, and our fellow citizens enter into millions of complex transactions every day that they don't fully understand, with actors far more powerful than they are. A mutual abandonment has taken place. Citizens have ceased to view the law as a profession and decided it's simply a business, like selling tires or hamburgers. At the same time, we lawyers have forgotten the legacy of our forebears and sought out the most lucrative clients and areas of practice. Now, most Americans can't afford a lawyer, and most lawyers can't afford to work for most Americans. Part of the problem is law school debt, a subset of the student debt bubble that's headed for a reckoning. Private lenders are certainly to blame, but we lawyers are to blame too by fueling the credentials arms race and insisting that a license to practice law can only come after 4 years of completely irrelevant undergraduate schooling and 3 years of mostly irrelevant law school. At the same time as our self-protective instincts have priced us out of the reach of most Americans, we've sharply limited the opportunities for anyone less than a lawyer to provide legal services, creating a problem I've described elsewhere as too many lawyers, too few advocates. Now we're watching the rise of Rocket Lawyer and LegalZoom, and society will reap the resulting whirlwind, because the widespread acceptance of legal documents generated by lay people who don't understand them will lead to more litigation, social cost, and economic friction, not less. The internet and artificial intelligence are powerful tools in the hands of trained professionals, and they need to be used to make those trained professionals and their knowledge more accessible, not to make them even less relevant than we lawyers already are to the lives of our fellow citizens. You're probably skeptical of my claim that America needs more lawyers, but think about this. The collapse in the price of securities, backed by millions of American home mortgages, triggered the global Great Recession. When all those loans were being made, who was asking the borrowers, "Are you sure you can afford this house? Do you know how much interest you'll pay over the life of the loan? Do you even remember the savings and loan crisis of the 80s and 90s? Do you think it was the mortgage brokers asking, they who only got paid if the loan closed? Do you think it was the lenders who would turn right around and sell the loans to the securitizers on Wall Street? Do you think it was the managers of the Norwegian Teachers' Pension Fund or whomever was buying those securities? Of course not. There were no effective mediators between those citizen borrowers and the powerful industries selling them dreams. But more laws and more regulation are a poor answer. Nobody knows better than we lawyers what a blunt instrument the law is. Congress and regulatory agencies are always playing catch-up, legislating to prevent the last crisis. And anyway, the industries they're purporting to regulate are constantly purchasing their votes and swaying their decisions. The American people don't need more laws. They need more advocates, trained professionals bound by disposition, tradition, and law to represent their interests. There are 1.3 million lawyers in America, about one for every 250 citizens. But a third of those lawyers work for the government, corporations, or big city law firms. Only about 800,000 work in firms of 5 lawyers or fewer, firms which are likely to be accessible by price or geography to any reasonable cross-section of the population. So that's one for every 412 citizens. And none of these lawyers can serve the diverse legal needs of the 412 people in their immediate neighborhood, since competence comes from specialization. You wouldn't go to a knee surgeon to have your appendix taken out, would you? No more should you go to a divorce lawyer to buy a house, or a real estate lawyer to draw up a will. And of those 800,000 lawyers, most of them are so distracted by running a business and trying to figure out how to make a living that they have less and less bandwidth available to think about you and your particular legal issue. 50% of American lawyers are sole practitioners, an incredibly inefficient business form. Practice management software firm Clio released figures last year that showed the vast majority of single lawyer and small firm practices are so economically marginal that they can barely be called businesses, collecting on about an hour and a half a day of billable time. So what's the solution? More lawyers, better lawyers, and cheaper lawyers. And here's how we'll get them. First, we need cheaper legal education. If we really wanted access to justice for Americans, we'd eliminate the third year of law school elective courses and the entire undergraduate requirement, and make law a 2-year associate's degree at the local community college. Most of us lawyers are technicians who simply need to know how to grant clear title to a house or probate a will, yet we insist on training ourselves as super generalists, as if we're Plato's guardians called to fill the ranks of the ruling class. Hell, we're so self-important that without writing or defending a dissertation, we call ourselves doctors of law. Second, we need to allow lawyers to get their licenses without incurring significant debt. I'm 45 years old, and I left law school 15 years ago with $102,000 in debt. Today I have $100,000 in debt. A few years ago, a young graduate of my law school came to me looking for a job, but I couldn't afford to hire him, in part because he had $150,000 in debt. A couple of years after that, during the Great Recession, I hired a bright, newly minted lawyer as a paralegal because there were no lawyer jobs available. That lawyer had over $200,000 in outstanding student loans. If we keep going in this direction, one day we'll wake up and discover that we don't have anyone willing to take on the personal economic risk of becoming a lawyer. Who will defend us then? Third, we need more focused modular legal education and training that gives us better prepared lawyers, and we need more non-lawyer advocates. Now, I'm glad I took civil procedure and criminal law when I was in law school, but my litigation days are over. And fortunately, I managed to plea bargain my one criminal defense case many years ago without doing any lasting harm to my client. Those courses and many others I took are completely irrelevant to the work I do for clients today. Law schools need to invent the legal equivalent of the coding boot camp, where someone else is going to do it and steal their market. Now, many legal services can and should be provided by non-lawyers who undergo specific training and who are supervised by lawyers. Supervision in other industries is greatly aided by detailed and tested policies and procedures, by managers trained in the art and science of management, and by software, hardware, and the internet. Creating an army of paralegals who provide excellent services at reasonable prices with the whole process properly managed and supervised is a very solvable problem. Fourth, we need to eliminate the barriers to lawyers uniting into large corporations. We lawyers have to be freed from the pretense that we're all entrepreneurs and from the need to market and manage a business if we are to fully and truly serve as lawyers. Those functions need to be delegated to non-lawyer business professionals, and in today's big firms, they mostly are. But the firms I'm talking about won't be the urban-centric global firms of the AmLaw 100, nor will they be the strictly for-profit partnerships that the vast majority of today's law firms are. The internet now allows the building up of geographically distributed cooperatives, made up of thousands of like-minded lawyers, in which corporate efficiency can be applied to governance, marketing, and management, leaving lawyers free to advocate for their clients, undistracted by the need to figure out where the next matter will come from or how to make payroll. A big obstacle here is simply in our own minds. We need to reimagine law firm structure and governance and evolve our own rules of professional conduct accordingly. As a largely self-regulated profession, we have the power to do this. A legal training provides a powerful set of tools for understanding and acting in the world, and many lawyers use those tools to achieve individual power and influence. But the ubiquitous calming influence of the law, as practiced by thousands of ordinary lawyers on behalf of ordinary citizens, is what is sorely lacking. If Americans feel they're caught in a web of laws they don't understand and a system that is tilted against them without anyone to guide them through it or advocate on their behalf, then trust in our whole system of government breaks down. Just as we support an impartial judiciary by guaranteeing judges lifetime tenure, we should recognize that to be truly independent and to be able to serve their clients fully, or at all, private lawyers need to be assured of a modest but predictable living. Just as we need independent judges, limiting the overreach of the legislative and executive branches, we need economically secure private lawyers who can defend the rights of ordinary citizens against the local police department, the federal government, or Amazon, Google, ExxonMobil. In parting, I want to give you one comparison. Germany regulates the fees lawyers are allowed to charge their human clients for common legal services. Last summer, I asked a German lawyer about the economics of his practice, and he showed me his smartphone app that calculated the court filing and legal fees for a particular type of matter, which I thought were remarkably low. But the flip side of that coin is that that German lawyer and all of his family members have no student debt, enjoy nearly free health care, and can look forward to a publicly financed retirement that, while not luxurious, is guaranteed to be dignified. Now, I'm not saying that Europeans are morally superior to Americans, that their social democracies aren't experiencing serious demographic and fiscal threats to the commitments their politicians have made, or that their ways of rationing access to education wouldn't strike us Americans as elitist or flawed in other ways. I am saying Germans have recognized that access to justice requires access to private lawyers, and in an effort to assure it, they've made a legal education free. By doing so, they've guaranteed that lawyers are affordable and available to everyone in their society. We Americans should do the same.